May 9, 1901. The New York Stock Exchange. The common stock of the Northern Pacific Railroad rocketed from $110 to $1,000 in a mere 17 hours of trading. Men who had bet against the stock, expecting it to fall, now owed fortunes they didn't have. An overwhelming cry of "Sell, sell, sell" was heard throughout the floor of the New York Stock Exchange. Every other stock on the exchange collapsed in the panic. Thousands of ordinary investors who had never heard of the Northern Pacific Railroad were destroyed in hours. And the two men who caused it? They had already called a truce and formed a company together. To understand the panic of 1901, you need to understand four men. J.P. Morgan, who we covered in videos 11 and 12, the most powerful banker in America, controller of Northern Pacific Railroad through his alliance with James J. Hill. James J. Hill, the empire builder, the most powerful railroad man in America, builder of the Great Northern Railway, Morgan's partner in controlling the Northern Pacific. E. H. Harriman, chairman of the Union Pacific, ruthless, precise, and deeply offended. And Jacob Schiff, senior partner of Kuhn, Loeb and Company, the same Kuhn Loeb that Paul Warburg had married into, the same banking house we covered in video 8. Harriman's financial weapon. The trigger, a railroad called the Chicago Burlington and Quincy. Hill and Morgan bought it for the Northern Pacific, giving them a direct line into Chicago. Harriman wanted that line for his Union Pacific. Morgan refused to share it. To a man of Harriman's temperament, this meant war. Harriman's plan was elegant and audacious. If Morgan wouldn't share the Burlington, Harriman would buy control of Northern Pacific itself, the railroad that owned the Burlington, forcing Morgan to deal with him as an equal. Harriman, backed by banker Jacob Schiff of Kuhn, Loeb and Company, covertly acquired blocks of Northern Pacific stock without fully alerting the market to their scale. The stock cornering was orchestrated by James Stillman and William Rockefeller's First National City Bank, financed with Standard Oil money. From April to May 1901, Harriman quietly bought a majority of Northern Pacific preferred and $37 million in common stock, $80 million in total. He was 40,000 common shares short of majority control. On Saturday, May 4th, Harriman telephoned Schiff and ordered him to buy those final 40,000 shares at Monday's opening. Schiff was at synagogue. He never received the message. Those 40,000 shares were never bought. That missed phone call changed everything. If this story is hitting the way we think it is, hit the like button. It helps more people find Vault and Ruin. And this is exactly the kind of story more people need to hear. On Friday, May 3rd, James J. Hill noticed something wrong with Northern Pacific stock price. It had been climbing for weeks, quietly, steadily, suspiciously. Hill immediately traveled from Seattle to New York to investigate. He arrived Saturday morning and went straight to Morgan's offices. Morgan was in Europe and received a frantic cable asking for authority to buy 150,000 common shares of Northern Pacific at the opening of the market on Monday morning, May 6, 1901. Morgan cabled his immediate approval, and the battle was joined between the titans. Monday morning, both sides buying simultaneously. Harriman's brokers buying for him, Morgan's brokers buying for Hill. By Monday morning, Harriman and Morgan held between them 630,000 of the 800,000 shares of Northern Pacific common in existence. Between them, they had accidentally cornered the market. Every share of Northern Pacific in America was either owned by Morgan or by Harriman, and thousands of traders had bet against it. Short sellers had been betting against Northern Pacific for weeks, borrowing shares and selling them, expecting the price to fall so they could buy them back cheaper. Now they needed to return shares that no longer existed on the open market. Short sellers dumped everything as their Northern Pacific losses grew. It set off a market-wide panic. Margin loan rates spiked to 60%, compounding the selling. The common stock of the Northern Pacific rocketed from $110 a share to $1,000 in a mere 17 hours of trading. At $1,000 per share, men who had sold borrowed stock at $110 now owed $890 per share they couldn't find. The losses were catastrophic and immediate, and every other stock on the exchange was collapsing simultaneously, as investors sold everything they owned to raise cash to cover their Northern Pacific positions. Affected stocks included St. Paul, Union Pacific, Missouri Pacific, Amalgamated Copper, Sugar, Atchison, and United States Steel. The entire market, every stock, destroyed in an afternoon. In the middle of the chaos, a rumor spread among traders that Arthur Hausman, broker for J.P. Morgan, had died. If Morgan's broker was dead, was Morgan himself in trouble? Was the most powerful bank in America collapsing? The selling accelerated. Hausman, the head of A.A. Hausman and Company, was brought to the floor of the New York Stock Exchange to assure traders that J.P. Morgan was still doing business. The rumor was false. But in the chaos of the worst trading day in American history, it had taken on the weight of fact. Realizing the worst, Morgan and Harriman called a truce and devised a plan. They agreed to allow short sellers to settle at $150 per share, far below the $1,000 peak, but far above what most had sold at. A partial mercy. For some, not all. Then, they did something that made Congress deeply uncomfortable. After reaching a compromise, the moguls formed the Northern Securities Company, a massive holding company combining Morgan's Northern Pacific and Hill's Great Northern under one corporate roof. The two men who had accidentally crashed the stock market had rewarded themselves with a monopoly. Theodore Roosevelt saw it immediately. Northern Securities became Roosevelt's first major antitrust target, the case we covered in video 13. As a result of the panic, thousands of small investors were ruined. Morgan and Harriman formed a company. The ordinary investors caught in their crossfire lost everything. Stop and see who was in this room. J.P. Morgan, whose Panic of 1907 intervention we covered in video 12, whose Jekyll Island connections we covered in video 4, who bought Carnegie's empire, built on the broken Union of Homestead, for $480 million. E.H. Harriman, backed by Jacob Schiff of Kuhn, Loeb and Company. The same Kuhn Loeb that Paul Warburg had married into. The same family network we covered in video 8. William Rockefeller, whose brother John D. we covered in video 11. Whose Standard Oil money financed the stock cornering operation through James Stillman's bank. The same names, the same institutions, the same network. The Panic of 1901 was not a conspiracy. It was something more revealing than a conspiracy. It was two factions of the same financial elite accidentally destroying the savings of thousands of ordinary Americans while fighting over a railroad, and then forming a company together. The Northern Securities Company lasted 3 years. In 1904, the Supreme Court ordered its dissolution. Theodore Roosevelt's first major antitrust victory under the Sherman Antitrust Act we covered in video 13. Morgan was furious. Again. Harriman went on to build an even larger railroad empire before his death in 1909. The ordinary investors who had been destroyed in the crossfire of their battle received nothing. The Panic of 1901 was the first stock market crash on the New York Stock Exchange. It was caused not by fraud, not by conspiracy, not even by intention. It was caused by two of the most powerful men in America fighting over a railroad and accidentally cornering the market in the process. And when they realized what they had done, they called a truce, formed a company, and moved on. The people caught between them were not part of that conversation. They never are. The vault gets richer, and somewhere, always somewhere, something else is burning. Subscribe to Vault and Ruin. We go where the money went.